before many times. Many, you're all good. Okay, that is fantastic. Well, welcome back. And as we had a really great talk yesterday by two students, and it was nice to invite back Carol, who is still adjusting to the time, and it's nice having her back here, which has been really nice because we've been a little all over the place with our bridge team this year. So we're going to have a great talk here in just 1 second with Dr. Miles, but just to let you know a little bit about some of the upcoming talks. Next week we have Conscious Evolution with Benjamin Castiello. He is really a fascinating guy. I mean, I kind of explain it. He describes some of the issues and the challenges that we have in the world a little bit differently than most people do, and he connects the dots in a way that most people don't tend to do. And so I've attended his workshops before and have hosted some events with him, and he's a really fascinating individual. And we also have Introduction to Conscious Communication and Nonviolent Communication Method next week with Ivana. And then, of course, we have the Great Parents Paddle that's coming up. And then we have a whole variety of other activities that are always in the weekly newsletter and also online at the Bridge with coral reef restoration, free diving with Dan, and a whole variety of other things. So just check out the newsletter, check out the Bridge website, and you can find a little bit more information. So we have a Buddhist who I'm not really sure where you stand on the whole time thing. We're still working that out. Whether you're middle way, the middle path on time. That's good. And so Dr. Miles is going to share a little bit today about sort of our way of having a pilgrimage, our own pilgrimage journey, and exploring how we can connect the thing. He is taught at university hospitals around the world. He's been at Harvard, you've been at Columbia, I can't remember, Cornell, and a few others. And so he has a really wonderful experience, rich, and being involved with a whole bunch of different groups. And so we started talking a little while back, and you've been wanting to come and give a talk. So this is a really nice opportunity to have him here. So thank you for coming, and let's give him a really nice round of applause.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to the Bridge for hosting me. Thank you all for coming. So I want to just talk about pilgrimage. Some of us in the audience here were just returning from pilgrimage, and some of the themes are fresh. And so this always gives me an opportunity to coalesce some of the experiences in my mind. You don't just arrive from pilgrimage with everything clear. It's a little bit like coming home after surfing or trying to surf in Bali's waves and get tossed around a little bit. And so this is an opportunity for me to share a little bit about my experience and try to synthesize and integrate, really. So thank you for indulging that. I'm going to talk about stories, and I will head in the direction of making it relevant to you. So allow me just a little background, time to discover the background. And at a certain point, hopefully it will translate and resonate more for you. So just sort of treat it as a story time at green school. Obviously I wanted to also, hey Karsten, I wanted to just also acknowledge just the world's current predicament. I think, that's important too. Coming out of pilgrimage, there were a number of experiences that point to messages of hope. And I think there are fewer of these, and we need more of them. So hopefully we can change a little bit of the vibration, even just a few of us in this room. That's really our responsibility. So I guess the pilgrimage theme is not one that's literal. I do lead and curate pilgrimages, actual pilgrimages, but the pilgrimage I'm talking about is more of a metaphorical pilgrimage. And in that way, it's more relevant to everybody. I started writing a book several years ago, and the book will be out next year. It's a loom upon which themes are woven, and 4 different types of pilgrimages are depicted or explained in the book. The first pilgrimage is one that we're all on. It's called the Great Year. Last time I was at the bridge, I talked about the Great Year, which is a 25,000-year pilgrimage that we take through the cosmos. It's like a clock in the sky. Every increment of the 12 increments is an astrological age or an eon or an epoch, which lasts approximately 2,150 years. So to make the transition around all 12 astrological signatures is considered a great year, 25,000 years. Why this is important and relevant to us is because where we find ourselves at present time is on the sea change between 2 eons, 2 epochs, what's called the Piscean age and what's called the Aquarian age, each with their own distinctive nature, with their own distinctive characteristic or quality. So we're in a time of tumult. We're in time just like a tide that is giving way. We find ourselves literally in an 80-year span or window where things are in transition. And how many of you actually feel that? Maybe that's why individually you also came to Bali, because you found yourself in a personal transition. As above, so below. So the signature of the Piscean age has something to do, or is most archetypally framed around religious, particularly Christianity. And as we transition into the new Aquarian age, it's much more about unity consciousness. So it's no surprise to me that we find Armageddon happening in the Middle East as 3 world religions collide, because they're at the tail end of their dominance. I think we could all agree that there's no way that we can move forward as a civilization with religions taken too literally. It's time to see them metaphorically, not to abandon them because they contain within them great value systems, but seen dogmatically and seen rigidly and taken too literally, those stories have become outdated. The people that are holding on to their one religious worldview against the others, they're colliding right now. So what you see when you have a transition of civilization is that you see the new emerging, and you also see the old doubling down. And what is the new emerging? We see people's movements across the planet for individual liberation. You have women's rights, you have sexual orientation and gender rights, you have rights for the environment. There is an opening of the what I would call a mandala symbol, opening its doors rather than the pyramid hierarchy, where dominance comes from the top down. Now there is more a collective engagement possibility. And as we feel that and as we participate in that, we are also going to be confronted by more rigidity. They come together. So this is just a flavor of one pilgrimage. The other pilgrimages have to do with the individual. I draw from Joseph Campbell, who many of you know wrote extensively about the hero's journey, a journey that you and I find ourselves on, taking ourselves from what is familiar into a discomfort zone, leaving home, either literally or metaphorically, finding some guide, some wisdom keeper to impart on us a new knowledge and during an initiation, facing an ordeal and discovering in that ordeal a treasure. And from there, not just indulging the treasure, but then coming home and finding a way to integrate and impart and share that on the world. This is the hero journey motif. Another pilgrimage. So there's one happening around us. There's one happening through a lifetime. There's also one that Carl Jung introduced, which is the pilgrimage of the psyche. That one is very much about fragmentation and entering into what's called the shadow. As within, so without. So many of us, maybe quite sure your trip to Bali has included its own specific dark night of the soul. You know, the Bali rice fields from a distance are one thing, but coming to Bali and making your transition, most of us have already gone through an initiatory period where we're broken down and all our delusions or anticipations are destroyed. And maybe that shook your foundation. And maybe that ruptured your relationship. And maybe that even unsettled your own psyche. And maybe there was a moment of extreme existential doubt when you asked yourself, what the fuck have I done? And I think this is one amazing thing about all of us, even though we're unique individuals coming to Green School, we all share that narrative. Like, you can't come here for free. You have to pay a price. Nobody told you that when you decided to sell your home. But once you arrive, you figure out not only did you leave your home and your country, but some very deep and essential part of your own nature has to be relinquished. And at 50 or 45, whatever, wherever you are in the age spectrum, that's a very hard ask. But it's essential. From the Jungian point of view, that's not a negative consequence. That's an open invitation. You want that. The thing is that we want the treasure. We don't want the trial. We want to make it to the other side and build a new life, but we don't want to make the sacrifice necessarily. Including, maybe we're willing to make the sacrifice, but are we willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to let go of everything that we know about who we are? This is what Jung was talking about. In his own life, he lived it. His own dark night of the soul, as evidenced in his red book, is some 5 to 6 year period of internal fragmentation, what we would call a near psychosis, in which he was actively, voluntarily giving himself over to the unconscious, to be led and guided, not to be challenged and assaulted. And that is a huge leap of faith. Huge leap of faith. And the third pilgrimage that I talk about in my book is the pilgrimage of the Tibetan Buddhist process of rebirth. And that's a literal process where the yogis learn how to control their mind stream so that they can make a conscious transition between life, led, guided, and inspired by compassion. And this is inclusive of a set of internal practices that are very deep. How to rebuild from the soul out. I call it reverse engineering, the way that if they have an accident with an airplane and they want to understand how the accident happened, they reverse engineer the airplane so they get down to the nitty-gritty of how it was constructed, and then they rebuild the airplane. And that's what the Tibetans figured out about life. You can dissolve down to the substructure, what's called the psychic DNA, the immaterial soul, and then you can consciously rebuild without affliction. And that's what a Dalai Lama is, for example. Somebody who has rebuilt personality and even embodiment to act as a fluid ambassador of enlightenment in the world. The Dalai Lama can't do it alone, so people that subscribe to this kind of ethos volunteer to be what's called a bodhisattva, choosing not to stay aloof from the world and its problems, but to rebuild themselves in order to be more effective in its engagement and rebuilding civilization. So those are the pilgrimages that are woven together in my book. And about 1.5 years ago, when I decided to move my family to Bali, I went through this process, and I'm still obviously going through it. And one of the things that I discovered when I first landed in Bali was I met one of the wisdom keepers here named Chokkade Kirtiasa. Some of you know, who's a homeopathic doctor up in Ubud. And it was during the pandemic, and he and I were privileged to spend 6 weeks together in conversation and dreaming, scheming, and sharing notes about civilization, his expertise in spirituality and psychology, and my interest too. And while this was taking place, we were hatching up schemes, and I was telling him that, you know, one of the honors that I have is to develop pilgrimages, and I wanted to very much develop a pilgrimage to come to Java and Bali. There is a very extensively beautiful, supremely beautiful mandala in Java called the Borobudur Mandala. And it is 9th century. It is the biggest mandala on the planet. And I told Chokkade, and while we were in his medicine garden, that I wanted to bring a pilgrimage there. And I was at the time turning myself over to the unconscious as Jung had described in his books, and I was having visions. And I don't say that lightly, because most of you, that will land on your ear as a kind of, there will be kind of suspicion. But I actually think all of us have these kinds of visions. We're not familiar with them. One of the visions that I had was that I would develop a pilgrimage to the Borobudur specifically, but on top of the Borobudur would be two masters. One of them was my master. I could see clearly Geshe Tenzin Zopa, who's a Tibetan master. And the other was a wisdom keeper of the local land, a tantric master from Java. And it was a faceless person, but in symbol form, I could see that these two wisdom keepers of distinct tantric traditions, one from the Tibetan side and one from the Shaivic tradition, were coming together in ceremony at the top of Borobudur. I was talking to Chokade about it and asking for his input. And as these things progress, they don't happen very quickly. They happen like a breadcrumb trail. And so one thing led to another. I was putting the pilgrimage together. Eventually, we got enough registrations. Eventually, we were ready to go. And I still didn't have this other piece. Who was it that's going to be Geshe Tenzin Zopa's counterpart? I was Googling, as we do in the rabbit hole realms of the internet, and I found a very discreet scholar in Java named Patrick Vandenbroek. He's an anthropologist in residence at the Amman Resort, and probably one of the most excellent guides and historians of the Borobudur Mandala. I found him synchronistically, has no website. I found him on WhatsApp, contacted him, and we hit it off instantly. And he told me this, after I said to him what my intention was, to bring a group to Borobudur, to have a joint ceremony of two tantric traditions on the summit. He told me he had the same vision. And that actually he and I, 10 years earlier, were in the same monastery at the same time in Nepal, studying with the same teacher. And there was 250 people there, and we never met. This was like meeting a brother from another life and sharing a vision, and only now coming into contact and sharing that vision. And he told me, I always wanted to do that too, but I never had access to the Tibetan side. I only had access to the Javanese side. And he had been training for the last 15 years. He's proficient in the language and the culture. And of course, he has a cadre of masters. And he said, I know your guy. I have your guy. It just brings goosebumps to my arms right now, just talking about it. So before the pilgrimage group arrived, I took Geshe Tenzin Zopa on a little pre-pilgrimage excursion to Mount Lawu, which is a sacred mountain in central Java, to meet his counterpart. And we went there. And these two guys were like kids. They weren't able to communicate in English directly, but the level of enthusiasm, playfulness, interest, receptivity, I think is very symbolic. Because what you have here is two masters of different religious traditions. But they weren't, what do you call it, posturing. They weren't trying to control the ground. They were really embodying interest. And they were melding their passions. The day that we arrived, I don't know where we are here, there's the beautiful mandala of the Borobudur, and therein is the top where the ceremony was going to happen. The day that I brought Geshe-la to meet Monku Jito was a dark moon. That's the moon at its most dark in its iteration. And Monku Jito told us that moment was very potent. It was a moment that probably all of us can really relate to. It was a moment when the night is darkest. Think about it for you. A moment when you have lost your way. A moment when you don't even know who you are. You can't even see your hand in front of your face. And the backstory for the individual Geshe Tenzin Zopa story was that he had arrived on the cusp of being charged with the greatest project of his life. In the months leading up to when I brought him to Solo, Geshe-la had lost his own master, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, was an incredible, great master, who at the last final days of his life asked to go up to Sum Valley in Nepal in the high Himalayas where Geshe-la was born. And there is Geshe-la's nunnery called Rachen Nunnery. Last year's pilgrimage went to Rachen Nunnery. And a few days before Lama Zopa Rinpoche died, he canceled all his plans, went in a helicopter up to Sum, and made the rounds of prayers and offerings and had a vision and insisted that Geshe-la build a stupa in the middle of Rachen Nunnery, a stupa 7 stories tall facing east towards Tibet. And the next day, he had altitude sickness, was flown back down to Kathmandu, and later passed away. So this is a great master's last vision, in a way, and his dying wish, imparting on his student to build a stupa. To understand and appreciate what the significance of that is, we have to unpack what a stupa is. And suddenly the stories that I'm about to tell are going to make much more sense. But let me just say this, the day that we arrived, Geshe-la succumbed to this great doubt that there was no way he could fulfill his master's wishes, that the enormity of the project was too cumbersome, too overwhelming. And he confessed to us, I don't think I can do it. How many of you relate to that? The moment where you're like weak-kneed, and then you start to react. I can't do it. I'm going to backtrack. He literally was on his phone sending out messages to his cadre of his crew. We gotta walk ourselves back from this project. Instead of 7 stories, let's just go humble now. Let's just make a modest one. You know, let's just, you know, let's be reasonable here. Fortunate for him, Geshe-la was not alone, and there were 4 or 5 of us around him. And over the course of the night, just as Monku Jitu had suggested, that the seeds that you plant in the dark night, they will come through into fruition. I mean, that is a powerful metaphor. If you keep your intention, if you keep your motivation pure, no matter how you are assailed by doubt, whatever it is that you have your envision, particularly amidst the darkness, that will come through to the light. The next morning, Geshe-la woke up. He was in a completely different frame of mind. He was able to marshal his resources around him. And he told us, not only we're going to build it, I am convinced it will happen. We will go for the full vision. We will manifest the full vision. And there was nothing to deter him. Full confidence the next morning. And I just want to say that that is so inspiring that he kept his path. He gathered support. He didn't let go of his vision. He came through the dark night with not only confidence, more confidence and conviction than before. Now, what is a stupa? What is a stupa? By the way, this is them cuddling, 2 masters, another symbol, you know, interreligious dialogue. Does it look like this in parts of the world right now? This is a symbol of what it could be when you don't hold down that your religion is something more powerful than anybody else's. This is how religion will survive. When it's done with elegance and intelligence and humanity. This is Rachen Nunnery. This is high in the Himalayas. This is at the center of this is where they wanted to construct the stupa facing Tibet. This is near the Tibetan border. Absolutely pristine there. This is a stupa in Kathmandu called the Bodhanath Stupa. This is about the size, roughly, of the vision that Lama Zopa imparted to Geshe Tenzin Zopa. He would like one to have something on the order of this, please. As I'm telling you this, don't take it literally. Think about yourself, what you have been charged with. Maybe it's your kids coming to green school. Maybe it's a business that you're running. Maybe it's you know, taking your relationship to the next level. Think about your project. And don't allow yourself to not think big is the message. Especially when the night is darkest. What a stupa represents, by the way, is also very important. A stupa is not a temple that you access. You see that it's a mound and there's no doorways. What the stupa contains are the relics of the Buddha and texts which represent the Buddha's enunciation of reality. So in what the Buddhists believe is that a stupa is an embodiment of the Buddha's mind. You know, just like your head, and out of which the vibration or the mantra emerges. What is it that the Buddha's mind is perceiving is what a stupa is, what it represents. And what is it that the Buddha realizes that's important for us? What the Buddha realizes is something called emptiness. Emptiness is not a nothingness. Emptiness is a fullness. Emptiness is a wholeness. Emptiness is an openness. Emptiness is what's considered the womb of possibility. That is what the Buddha realizes. The Buddha realizes that nothing is fixed in and of itself. Everything is fluid. Everything is malleable. Everything is flexible. Everything is transformable. Everything is transmutable. Water isn't what water is, because water transforms into vapor, vapor into ice. So when you look at water and you think water is water, water is not that. When you look at a table, you can also deconstruct the table until it becomes atoms, subatomic, and then open into the quantum field. It's not there as it appears. Do you follow? That is what emptiness is. Emptiness means that things are fluid. And they're so fluid that it actually allows the apprehender or the perceiver to see different things in the nature of reality. So a mountain climber or an alpinist sees the mountain in a different way as somebody who had a ski accident on a mountain. Does it make sense to you? And someone who takes 3 months of their life to prostrate every 3 steps, a Tibetan pilgrim heading for Kailash, sees the mountain differently than the alpinist and the ski accident, right? So my question for you is, who owns reality? Who's got the right view on what the mountain is? Anybody? Who has the right view on the mountain? Is it the alpinist who has the right view? Is it the pilgrim that has the right view? Is it the victim of the accident that has the right view? Your answer is obviously none of them have the right view. Does that mean that there's no mountain? No, it means that the mountain is empty and therefore available for the perception of the viewer. Available for the perception of the viewer then leads to a teaching called karma. What you see is forced upon you by what you have thought, said, and done in the past. Digest that for a moment. Nothing is what it appears. What we are seeing is foisted upon us by what we have said, thought, and acculturated in our mind, coloring the doors of perception through which we see reality. In other words, reality is just an appearance. Whose appearance? Your appearance. How did it get there? Because of what you have thought, said, and done in the past. You want to change the world? Where do you start? According to the Buddhists, you start with this bit of real estate right here. That's seeing the world. That is what a stupa is. The stories that I'm unpacking right now are all about stupas. Why are they so important? Because they, from the Buddhist point of view, are medicine. They represent medicine. If you want to heal the world, you want to transform the world, remember who you are. Aspire for correct view of reality, to see things as they really are, to see things as open, and then practice unimaginable amounts of virtue so that you can see and perceive a pure world. That's basically the scientific methodology of Buddhism. It's not about belief. It's about carving, creating, molding, and sculpting perception so that the doors are cleansed, so that you can be invigorated and enlivened by compassion, so that you can actually make a difference in the world. Collectively, we are shape-shifting the world. If our vibration is based on fear and division, we see what we see. We know what to expect. If each of us change our vibration, then the collective field becomes malleable and can begin to shape shift the trajectory of the planet. Enough people get together with a clear lens and an open heart. We have no idea. We have no idea what can happen. Once Geshe-la came through the dark night, how am I doing on time? Can someone give me a little time stamp here?
29:35.
Okay, I gotta move along then. Geshe-la came through the dark night with a lot of conviction, and he and Mankujitu were getting along like happy campers. And they decided how they would interact with the vision, that the stage, if you will, that Patrick Vandenbroek and I set for them. And they said that what they would like to do is, on top of the Borobudur mandala is a stupa. But the stupa is broken. And what they would like to do is they would like to do a ceremony with all the pilgrims to envision and activate and repair the stupa for world peace. So there you see, this is what it should look like, or once looked like. This is what it looks like now. And here is one of the great archetypes. The stupa is broken. Just take a moment to think, ask yourself this. Do you feel broken? Do you feel the rice fields and the pollution in Bali and the plastic pollution is broken beyond repair? The mountain of garbage that's burning, broken beyond repair. The wars that are waging on multiple theaters across the planet have you feeling like we are broken beyond repair. Wherever you find that doubt, wherever you think it's broken, this is the message. Mankujitu and Geshe Tenzin Zopa wanted us to envision completion. First, envision completion, then you can execute. We weren't going to go looking for bricks around the Borobudur to reconstruct it. The point is, where do you start? The point is that you start inside. There is a theory or principle of correspondence in alchemy that says, as above, so below, as within, so without. The wars are raging, the rice fields are a mess, the waters are polluted, because we are fragmented within us. We are succumbing to our own hallucinations. We forget how inextricably interconnected we are. We have lost sight of causality. We are prone to our own addictions. That's how war, that's how pollution, that's how separation, that's how polarization occurs. Where do you start? Geshe Tenzin Zopa and Mankujitu want us to pray, meditate, create vibration, create energy, see the completion as within, so without. Once that's done, then it will become easier to manifest it. Here's another stupa, 2019, just to give you another reference point. Also broken at the top in Sri Lanka. Here's another one, a great one in India, where the Buddha gave his first teaching at Sarnath outside of Varanasi. Here's my friends joining and merging their vibration together. They're embodying the principle of merging energy together. This is when they were figuring out what they were going to do and hatching a plan. There we are. The group is now at the summit. We're taking what's called the Bodhisattva Resolve, which, as I mentioned, the Bodhisattva are the pledges a human being makes to take care of their own mind in order to be of service to the planet. A pledge with a master at a sacred site, the symbol of unity, a mandala is a symbol of unity, underneath the spire, which is broken. Very powerful. Very powerful. These are ordinary people like you and me who have said, enough of the rice fields, enough of the soy latte, enough of the frolicking in the waves with the surfboard. The purpose of my life is to awaken for the benefit of others. Without that, everything is meaningless. Doesn't mean you have to be Buddhist. Just means you have to recognize why you're here and draw all your efforts into the project of shape-shifting civilization. After the ceremony, boom. Here's the meditation. Everybody joining. We can all do it right now. It's not like just a few of us up there. You could do it right now. If we had more time, we could lead a meditation. You could participate in it. It's not based in time and space. It's symbolic. It can happen anywhere. You can fall into the vibration of seeing a better planet at any moment. In fact, that's your responsibility, is not to succumb to fear and fragmentation, but to find within you the inner resources of well-being so that you can tap the right vibration and envision a better planet. I'm not saying I can do it. I get just as devastated when I see those images on Instagram about what's happening around the world, but it is my responsibility as a partner and a father and a member of a community and a member of a global society to find a better energy. An energy of trauma translates to nothing. Maybe it even detracts. An energy of hope, of goodwill, of peace. Maybe it doesn't stop the bombs from dropping right away, but it certainly creates a tsunami effect. Maybe it doesn't change tomorrow, but you have to have a long view from the point of view of the Buddhist game. Here's another stupa. This was another thing that happened on the Bali pilgrimage. Once we left Java and from ceremony, we came to Bali. This is in Tumpak Seri. This is the Pegulingan stupa. It's 1,000 years old. And Geshe Tenzin Zopa was kind enough, at my request, to reactivate it. What I mean by reactivating it is it had kind of gone dormant. Of course, the Balinese culture is mostly predominantly Hindu. It's not a well used or frequented stupa. So he did a ceremony to reactivate it. And I see this again through the lens of archetypal psychology. What's happening here? He's repairing a stupa at the Borobudur Mandala with his heart. He's reactivating a stupa that's laid dormant for several centuries. He's constructing one in the Himalayas from scratch. Why? Why is he doing that? He's doing that for us. He's doing that for humanity. He's doing that so that the beacon of the symbol of hope, that emptiness speaks to, that emptiness makes possible, that more and more people will go to these kind of places, meditate on these kinds of frequencies, envision a better planet. It's not about conversion to Buddhism. It's about conversion to sanity. That's what it's about. Remember who you are, remember what's possible, tap the right frequency, engage properly, engage with dignity, engage on the basis of humanity, and never succumb to the hopelessness that you are broken, because fundamentally, brokenness is only an appearance. This looks like it hasn't been used. The chatra on top of on the Borobudur looks broken. The stupa in the Himalayas is not constructed. But Geshe-la, at the end of my conversation and pilgrimage with him, I had this little dialogue with him. I said, Geshe-la, actually, my friend here, Matthew, and I were having a conversation with him. I said, Geshe-la, this will be my last little thing here before I turn it over to you guys. Sorry for being so long-winded. The last conversation I had with Geshe-la, I said, are we broken? And he said, yeah, we're broken. He said, yeah, we're broken. And why we're smashed to pieces, I think is what he said. Yeah, we're smashed to pieces. Why do you think we're on pilgrimage? Pilgrimage is about gathering up the pieces. We're broken. And then he said, but in another way, we're never broken. In another way, we're never broken. From the point of view, remember, everything is based on the point of view. From the point of view of delusion, the chakra is broken. From the point of view of delusion, you feel helpless. From the point of view of enlightenment, the chakra is never broken, just like the human spirit. From the point of view of enlightenment, the chakra is always complete. And he said it giggling and laughing. And this is not someone who's aloof from the problems of the world. This is someone who recognizes what's the best vibration and foot forward. Thank you. So I guess if we have a little time for thoughts and reflections or questions.
Yep, we have plenty of time. No problem. Thank you. Thank you for that. So questions from anybody? How's your stupa? Glad you told me what a stupa was, because I was getting ready to ask that. So. Any questions? No. So I've asked this question before in sort of these environments, and it's kind of I think it's somewhat annoying to some, but I ask it anyways. So, because you talk about sort of this balance between what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, and it's our outlook, it's our delusion, it's our illusion, it's the reality, it's the non-reality, and things like that. And in the immediacy, we have this frustration with things like garbage and pollution and all these other things. In the from a temporal, so it's there, it's present, but it's temporal. It is going to be gone, right? It may not be gone in our generation or in the next generation. All of this is going to be gone, right? And so now it starts getting into a little bit of a peculiar discussion, because we don't like to think that far out. We don't like to think that Earth has been around for 7 billion years and whatever infinite time, and all of this is just going to go away, right? And so it isn't to just throw our hands up and say, oh, I'm not going to pick up the garbage or do anything like that, but putting it into the context of the bigger picture, it's like we're all going to disappear. Green school is going to be gone. We're going to be gone. Our histories will be gone. And so how do we kind of bring that back down to a personal aspect of kind of balancing these, I don't know what they are, this reality of kind of our time and presence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is we have a clash of paradigm where you say we're all going to be gone. It's not necessarily how ancient cultures or Western cultures think about things. So first and foremost, we come from a reductionistic scientific worldview that views that life ends terminally after death, which is only 400 years old. If you ask the Balinese, where does their soul go? Or if they have a soul, they're going to give you a different perspective. If we remember that we have a soul, and soul is infinite, timeline is forever, it is beginningless and forever, then that changes the entire question, doesn't it? The most important thing from a contemplative tradition is to shapeshift your soul. If everything within is a reflection of without, if you take care of the within, the without follows. If you take care of the within, and you illuminate the within, the soul, and the soul is infinite, then the environment, yes, that's always changing, but it evolves into something more pristine. They call it a Buddhaverse. A Buddhaverse is a place of peace. It's a high civilization. And just like the 25,000-year rotation of the pilgrimage of the celestial stars, civilizations rise and fall. We have high civilizations where people are much more awakened. In the 25,000-year span, there are what are called golden ages, and then there are very dark ages. We're coming out of a dark age where people are consumed with materialism and have forgotten that they are everlasting. So if we shift the dial a little bit and let go of scientific reductionism, and we open or are receptive to the wisdom traditions that have been extant on this planet for centuries, they're all saying something very similar. You have a soul, time is cyclic, the purpose of your life is to illuminate the soul. If you work within, then the externalities begin to shift. Now, it's also true that yes, everything cyclic means that what goes around comes around, and high civilizations sort of decline. So there you get this notion of lila, which is the play. You have to sort of be able to navigate the fact that you're in the world but not of it. This is why Shiva is standing on one leg with one foot in dance. Same with Aryatara, Mother Tara. Same thing. One foot is curled in equipoise, meditative state, when the other one is moving forward. What these symbols are saying is, if you recognize your infinite nature, you can get too aloof and remove from the world. If you don't recognize your nature, you can get overwhelmed by the world, which I think is what happens to a lot of social activists on the front line. They get what's called compassion fatigue and they burn out. Or they get just as hypocritical as everybody that they're countering. Yes or no? Whether it's veganism or free Tibet or whatever, if you forget who you really are, you can get caught up. What's the best method? The best method is one that's non-dual. part of our mind in the emptiness, ultimate reality, infinite nature of things, your everlasting soul. The other one is what's the best foot forward? Compassion. Just do what you can. Do what you can in your immediate sphere of influence. Do what you can. I mean, the funny thing is, at the end of the pilgrimage, I also talked to Made Chakra, who is a local Balinese advocate and of permaculture and farming regeneration. And I said to him, I said, do you often like look around and at the development happening in Bali and all the trash, and do you lose your confidence and your faith? I mean, I was asking him personally because yes, that's sometimes where I go. He said, of course I do, of course I do. Of course I lose my hope. But then I always think, what can I do about it? If I become hopeless, what can I do about it? So there is like, he also has this energy of like, let me just do what I can do. That's how my life becomes meaningful. Let me do what I can do. So he has a little workshop there in Jatilui. He brings people there who are interested. He's not out trying to do a jihad of conversion. He's not out there trying to tap on doors and convert people's minds. So here I am. Here's my center. You want to know about how to be more sustainable? Come and learn. Come and participate. Come and see the possibility and then move forward in the best way that you can.
Are there any other questions? I have one more on the eternal soul that I'm kind of wondering about here. I'll come back to it if we have time.
We'll open up that can of worms.
Yeah, about the internal soul. Thank you very much for shining your light here in the bridge.
Thank you.
What resonated with me was what you said about the dark moon. So sometimes after this dark moon experience, waking up the next day, metaphorically, feeling more convinced than ever. But in my personal life, it also turns around the other way. Like I will go to sleep. It feels like there's a dark moon. And after that, I wake up and my confidence is out of the window. And it goes like this and all the time. How do you keep this vision of this repaired stupa in this movement?
Yeah, it's a longer answer, but the short answer is virtue. Virtue. Everything in Buddhism is based on virtue. It's a long. I mean, this is why an education is important. But if you understand emptiness, that everything is open, then you have to have its corresponding principle, which is karma. They go together. Like when I said that who holds the truth on the mountain, and everybody agreed. No, there's no actual fixed mountain. There's only the one we perceive. Then you flip the dial on the teaching and you go from emptiness to karma and you go, well, the person that had the accident sees the mountain one way. The person that's pious, pilgrim, sees a mountain another way. You start to ask yourself, how do you want to see the world? Where's the responsibility lie? How do you actually change perception? Well, that is all through virtue in Buddhism. The more virtuous you are. Virtuous by meaning compassion, patient, tolerant, generous, kind, sensitive. The more you stick to that, that's why Geshe Tenzin Sopa, I go through a dark night, it takes me a whole month to recover. Geshe-la, it took him a couple of hours. What's the difference between us? I'm a schmuck. Geshe-la's filled with virtue. He's, since he was 9 years old, he knows to find the right vibration in order to project a better reality is to live in virtue. And if you travel with him, as some of us have, you are traveling with a saint. You're traveling with somebody who lives from a different vibration, and you can see palpably the difference. Everything is an offering. Everything is a rejoice offer, rejoice offer, rejoice offer. Oh, they have this, I mean, I can go on and on and on because this is one of my favorite topics. It's the heart of Buddhism. Buddhism is a science. It's not necessarily religion, although it has some funny things. The science of it is understand the nature of reality is open, then take responsibility for the projecting, making mechanism of your mind. How do you arrive on the back end of a dark night filled with confidence? How do you get anything? How do you get a business that works? How do you get a partner that loves you? How do you get anything? Everything is based on karma, and karma is driven by virtue. So those two teachings come together. I know this, but it's hard to practice it. That's why my life is very chaotic. Just ask some of my friends. If my kid acts out, I'm prone to reacting. Now, if I react, it goes around and around and around, doesn't it? Not only for me does that groove in my brain get even stronger, but then what goes around comes around. What happens to my kid? He starts living in that vibration. So how do we get there? You follow a path. What does the path include? It includes one layer of it is cultivating this openness, and the other one is cultivating virtue.
Thank you very much. And on this note, I would love to ask you about the energy of trauma that you mentioned. That the energy of trauma, you can't go anywhere, and you need another kind of energy. And my question is, what do you do with, or in your practice, what do you suggest to do with the energy of trauma, which is then, which leads all these, acting out and everything.
I mean, I'm gonna just say, because even if it doesn't land well, like the images I see on Instagram, I turn them off. I have a reason for that. Social activists will come and say, well, no, you have to bear witness to the atrocities of humanity. And I totally disagree. Prior to the internet, our generation would read a headline and we would digest information and we would understand the current events. Now we're being bombarded by images. Okay, and the science of mirror neurons means not only are we seeing information, we're living information. We're living information. What we see on those images is stirring up inside of us a vicarious experience of death and trauma. Now, that vibration, living in that vibration, renders us paralyzed, shut down, and absolutely useless. So I don't care how informed you are, if your vibrational setting is vicariously traumatized, you're not helping anyone. So I'm a therapist and I receive clients from around the world. And this is one of my biggest things is like, yes, stay informed, find ways to stay informed that don't trigger the potency of your neural network, and find ways to modulate how much information is actually necessary. Because if you really want to be a responder, you have to check your energy first. If you're right there, if you are a lifeguard and you go out to save a victim and you're not well trained, you're liable to go down with them. If we want to be a bodhisattva, we care. I believe everybody here cares. I really do. You don't come to a place like Green School Bali to to acculturate your child into a next generation thinking because you don't care about the planet. But how? How are you going to be optimally effective in your engagement matters. That's why I said I have a lot of debate with social activists who aren't contemplative in nature. Social activism is only half the coin. You can come from really egregious shadow as a social activist, yes or no? You can be totally hypocritical and blindsiding, and you can reinforce othering and division, yes or no? Because you're vehement and you're full of your own, you're riled up in your own radical justification. You can reinforce division. So are you helping? I submit to you, on the other hand, I've spent enough time in the Buddhist world to know that there are plenty of yogis that aren't socially engaged. Do you hear what I'm saying there? Oh, I'll just go to the Himalayas, I'll do a little meditation, a few malas, take care of the inner soul. But they don't dare interact. And I think they're kind of hiding out. Okay, so we're talking about a middle way. Trauma is real. In a way, the chakra is broken. But in another way, trauma can heal. This is how I make my living. You can move a human being through something, not only move them through so that they can hobble around on a cane, but that you can move someone through trauma in a way that it actually makes them a more exceptional human being. That's what the stupa represents. That's true and possible. But how? Goes back to the same question. How are you going to get there? First, close your doors to all the vibrational settings that are going to actually stir you up and make you less capable. So there are 3 principles in Buddhism. Disarm your negativity, cultivate your virtue, illuminate your mind. If you wanted to distill the entire path, all of our training, as some of my friends and I are on extensive long trainings, it boils down to these things. When you go on pilgrimage, you're doing these 3 things. You're letting go of your own negativity, you're cultivating virtue, and you're trying to awaken to the nature of reality, the emptiness of reality. Then your vibrational setting is actually in place to be an advocate, then you can then by all means go and do what Madi Chakra does in the rice fields. Go and do what Karsten does at Prasad. Go and do whatever it is that you do. Coaches, therapists, mothers, fathers, whatever you do, check your setting, check your mind, then move into the world.
Any other questions? Yes. You just hand this.
Thank you, Miles. I was on the pilgrimage, this one, and I reflected a bit on the question asked by Anders and your answer to it. I was for the first time in my life connected and in the presence of a Lama Geshe Sopa Tenzin. And I felt like I had to ask him a lot of questions because, I'm there now. And every time when I came close to him, it seems like the question dissolved somehow. It just went through him or me or whatever, it disappeared. Which brought me back to a kind of live stream. How important is this question? And is the answer already within me? So it gave me a kind of, I don't know if I can call it emptiness or whatsoever, but it doesn't seem to be that important anymore to ask, just to be with it. That's how it was for me.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the, most of us, we don't have experience or exposure to someone. We don't believe that people can change like that. I mean, we're a little jaded in scientific, materialistic, modern culture. We don't believe in a soul. We don't believe in infinite life. We don't believe in sages and saints. We don't even believe in the power of the unconscious to guide us through visionary experience. We're kind of a jaded culture, but when you get around someone like this, whether it be the Dalai Lama, it can be other traditions too, people that are really realized, sometimes it's not what they're saying. Sometimes it's what they're being, what they convey with their being, the space that they provide, the energy that they have. It's like a neural uplink. Things can just get dissolved. Concerns and curiosities and questions can get dissolved. But the alternative is also true. You get around characters like this, and on occasion, they can stir things up. They can shake the fucking foundations because that's exactly what you need. You're one person that is so fixated and holding tight to your reality, and boom, just being in there. 2 pilgrimages ago in Nepal was a nightmare. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't want to put that on a marketing promotion, but it was true. I mean, the whole crowd was around Geshe Tenzin Zopa in the tantric power places of Nepal, and we got a thorough ass kicking. And people were like, Miles, I don't know if I can go on another pilgrimage with you, man. I'm still recovering. Honestly. Yeah, but what are you recovering from? What's really going on there? What was the Lama's teaching? What was the Lama's vibration? Yeah, so we're not used to that. We're not used to that. Like for me, I can't operate at that vibration. I'm operating on conceptual level. I have to teach. I'm restricted in my ability and my range of teaching. Someone like that, full range of capacity of teaching. Don't worry about the words or following with your notebooks, every little word. Yeah.
I'm going to ask my question because it keeps coming up. I basically believe in the concept of the eternal soul. I believe that we are energy and ongoing. But if we are talking about the concept of the eternal soul, how then do we rationalize the Christian belief of that if you're kind of not a great person, you then are doomed to eternal damnation? So now that soul is kind of stuck in the shit house.
I got it.
Okay.
The short answer is
I'm not a Christian. I'm not worried about myself here. I'm just kind of find it funny.
As I mentioned at the head, the progression of the equinoxes means that we're at a tail end of literalism. It doesn't mean jettison your traditions. In my book, where I landed was that actually every religion has a set of what are called esoteric literatures. These are the private, secret literatures. They are about direct experience. In Buddhism and Hinduism, they call them Tantra. But they're there in Christian mysticism also. They're there in the Kabbalah. there's no actual need to jettison your religion. There's just a need to find the ones that are about direct personal experience, let go of this sort of patriarchal, hierarchical, control-based, literal interpretation. That's how we're going to transition between the Piscean and the Aquarian ages. We are about energy now. We are about energy, information, the soul's illumination. Those are our best resources, actually. They're just on the top layer. You have the public-facing teachings that are basically about control. You need an intermediary. You should bow down to someone else who has the authority. But if you look at the esoteric literature, all of them are basically pointing to the same thing. You can have Christ consciousness, and there's a method. And also the methodologies, whether you look at the Yoga Sutras, or you look at the Buddhist Tantras, you look at the Christian mysticism, you look at the alchemical texts from the Renaissance, they have surprisingly similar approaches. They all have one or more versions of ultimate reality being empty. They have texts on virtue. They talk about the soul as being infinite. They have a surprising array of commonality. So that's how I get around this question, because I'm also not someone that says, oh, discard religion, it's a mess, it's creating more destruction and death. One of the problems about where we are right now is that we have no moral basis anymore as secular societies. You know, just look around. Because of the pendulum swing between Orthodox religion and the Enlightenment in Western Europe that bore scientific revolution, we let go of the bedrock of virtue, a set of moral principles and ethicals to live by so that we could live collectively together. Now it's a free-for-all. Civilization is basically in free-for-all. You know, nothing matters, get yours, build your house in any kind of rice field, don't worry about your waste, you know, protect your kids, buy more guns, whatever. I'm not about letting go of those things. I'm about finding within them the ones that have direct implication and work with them, import them into the new eon.
Great, thank you. I am now 1% clearer. No, that was great. You know, I'm getting there. I'll need a couple more lifetimes to figure it out. Okay, any more questions from anybody? Yes.
Hi, Miles. My experience when I went to pilgrimage, it was very hard, the integration after. Seems like that my mind is so easily going into limitless and consciousness and the source. So when I come back, it's really difficult to stay in the 3D world. And so how do you integrate that in order to make a pilgrimage during our daily life every day?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think it deserves a more thorough answer, but it's something that I think about now that the psychedelic experience is now a revolution, because that's a kind of pilgrimage I talk about in my book. You can go for a ayahuasca trip in Peru for 3 or 4 days, but then, you know, what happens after? You can go on pilgrimage for 2 weeks and be with a master and, you know, just tap something really open and huge inside of you, or something really chaotic, because that's what's been boiling, you know, that's what's been boiling under the surface the whole time, but you just managed to keep the lid on it. And then what your pilgrimage is about blowing it wide open. All your defenses are relinquished, and all of a sudden all that muck and pus and shit is coming out. And then you're like, I paid $5,000 for this? Yes. What you asked for was transformation. How are you gonna get through transformation if not through the dark night? But the integration piece, you need leadership, you need support, you need to be around like-minded people. You know, you have to protect your sense doors, for example. And you need time. You need a lot of time, actually. We underestimate grossly how much time it takes. Like, I'm getting emails post-pilgrimage now. We're about a month away from out of pilgrimage now. The emails that I'm getting are just like these. Like, I'm having trouble with this, my partner that, my kids that. I'm losing my momentum with my meditation practice. I'm losing my conviction about my job, my work prospects. I don't know if this is right for me. It's cooking. Things are cooking. You know, you don't arrive after ayahuasca or after pilgrimage or after a single session of psychotherapy ready-made, out of the box, complete. And so one of the things is just understand, like, things take time. And in our busy world, instant gratification world, we want it to be like, no, the day I come home, I should have been like a big smile on my face and everything's clear. In the way, the pilgrimage never ends. Okay? Even when you pay your ticket for pilgrimage and you're like, the day you leave, no, the departure started when you saw that advertisement and you're like, I want to, but I don't. You know, I can't leave the kids. Oh, I can't find the money. I can't take that much time off. No, it's impossible. These are what Joseph Campbell called the refusal for the call. You come up with a bullshit story that you're really what's underneath is you're not ready to face your fear. And once you face your fear and you actually work with it and you can find some other part of your being, the coming home, honestly, the coming home can take months or years. How many of you, just out of curiosity, have been in Bali more than 3 or 4 years? And how many of you felt like it took at least a year to even get settled once your head was done spinning? At least a year. Yeah, I mean,
10 years. I got to move to Switzerland.
Yeah, so like one of the things that happens when you come to Bali and what happens on pilgrimage is that the centrifugal force or orbit around which you orient yourself in the world, the ground gets pulled out from under you, like this sense of solidity, the way that time should happen, the way that productivity should happen, the way that my identity shows up, how my identity is reinforced by the people that I'm dealing with. All of it gets pulled. And then the common instant next reaction is, how do I get it back? Because it was easier, God damn it. It's easier to have that identity, even though I didn't like it, it was creating problems for me, than to have no identity, not know who I am, not know where I'm going, not know what the next thing is. This is what the biography of the great saints and even Carl Jung, how inspiring they are, is they're talking about years of being on pilgrimage. If you look at the Greek myths and you look at something like Homer's Odyssey, we're talking 10 years. We're talking 10 years. The word in Greek is nostos, the homecoming, the yearning for home. It can take 10 years of an odyssey of your life. And what you're trying to do is not come back to where you were. You're trying to be more open, flexible, and capable so that you can ride the waves going forward. It's not about creating a new identity that's just as rigid as the one you once had. Do you follow? I see this in trauma all the time. People leave their relationships and they get freaked out that they're alone and they go back to one just like it. Looks a little different, just enough to entice and tantalize, but it's really the same thing. It serves the same fundamental program. It takes a long time to be able to resist the reaction of grabbing for ground. I mean, Ellie and I talk about this all the time. Every time I see sweet Ellie, we're like, how you doing in Bali right now? How's it going riding that wave? You know, found your ground yet? Not a fucking chance. We're newcomers. We're like a year and a half into this pilgrimage, and it's like, okay, now we've got the villa, and the kids are in school. I'm like, what about the identity? Shaky AF. Really? And what's going on in the body is, I got to find out who I am. I've got to recreate what I did in New York. 25 years in New York. Could put out a post for a class and then instantly filled. Now I'm here in Bali, put out a post in class. Guess how many people register? 0. What do you think it does to me? It shakes me up. Maybe I've chosen the wrong path. Maybe this whole thing of visionary experience moving to Bali was a fucking farce.
Don't tell us now.
Holy shit. And then you remember stories like this. And that's the whole point of today's talk. Just don't worry about the stupa, what it looks like. Don't even worry about Buddhism, what it's teaching. Just go for the setting, the principle, the vibration. When you hit that dark night of the soul, try to remember. We're all in this together. We're all wanting the same thing. Actually, it's enough to make me cry that we want the same thing. We're so close to seeing a planet where our kids can actually thrive. We're close. It's going to take time, and we're really responsible. And what's the best setting forward so that we can actually make that happen? You know, I think that's the point. That's the point of today. Hopefully you have a little seed in your heart about emptiness and karma, about virtue, about never giving up, about understanding that, yes, it feels broken, but it's actually open.
So beautiful. Thank you, Miles. I find myself in a moment exactly like where I see where I want to go, and I'm kind of, a lot of the times I'm like, this is too big. This is too big. Like I cannot do that. And for me, you know, it's sometimes hard to keep on that vibration of believing in the high vibration, you know, of not just believing in that's possible, but also how do I not engage with the pollution and all of that, because this really drains my energy, you know. How do you do that? Like on a practical level, like you do meditations on a daily basis, like what do you do to keep your vibration on that level high and to keep believing that nothing's too big?
So just, first of all, I think we have to have some humility. We're not going to be able to stay in that vibration. Just forgive yourself. Number one, I've been doing this 25 years. So I'm probably more reactive than most of you, which begs the question, what the fuck have I been doing? You know, number one, like, have some humility and some forgiveness. You can't just jump into the deep end and be a Geshe Tenzin Zopa on a good vibration, or the Dalai Lama on a good vibration. So the question is the same. It's the same if you want to surf. It's the same question that we ask our own kids. How do you do anything? How do you do anything? You want to learn a new skill? Your mind, from a Buddhist point of view, you're working with your mind as a skill. How do you do anything? You practice. It's not just sitting on a meditation cushion and practicing. I mean, this is the one thing that most of my career I've tried to expand the notion of what practice is, because I think it's too rigidly defined that we should all be on meditation cushions indefinitely for hours a day. It's not my approach. I go for Geshe Tenzin Zopas, which is virtue. I wrote an article 20 years ago almost called McMindfulness, which was a counter to this idea that we should be millions and millions and millions of people should be meditating. Actually, millions and millions and millions should be practicing virtue. Why don't we start with kindness? Why don't we start with a vegan and a steak eater sitting at the same fucking table, being able to listen to each other, and then we can talk about true spirituality. Okay, so how do we do it? There's a path. The path is broad. It includes small practices like techniques, but it also is get an education. It also means surround yourself by like-minded people. Don't be demeaning of other people. Just pick your friends wisely for the things that you want to do. If you want to be a surfer, you hang out with the surfers, and not only just the surfers that are mediocre. You go for the surfers. You go and watch and participate with the surfers that are Excalibur, right? For me, once a year, I go on pilgrimage with Geshe Tenzin Zopa as a source of inspiration. 2 weeks, I get to see where I'm heading. I'm heading in that direction. I want to be more like that. I come home and I see in the mirror my ugliness and my own humanity. I have to forgive. What kind of things can we do? Yeah, I mean, having discussions, reading these textual materials, getting an education, doing some practices, but mostly living in kindness with our own kids at our own dinner tables, in conversation with other people, how you practice your business plans, how you treat your staff, for example. Excellent opportunity for the practice of virtue. You live in Bali, you just do and if you had, like, for example, if you had the permaculture or the sustainability lens, it would be the same thing. Someone would go, you know, how do I build up towards being more sustainable, more ethical in my livelihood? And it's the same kind of answer. You have this as comprehensive map or plan as possible. You do your best, and you recognize you will fail. And you recognize, in a way, things are really broken. Like, it's not an easy fix. you're not an easy fix. You're going to take time. Thank God you have infinite life. But from a Buddhist point of view, you're not guaranteed to have this precious human life again. So what's the answer again? Practice virtue. You'll repeatedly have a precious human life. You'll repeatedly evolve. Some of your evolves, like the flow graph isn't linear like this. You just do the best that you can with some humility. But yeah, I think like green school. Let's look at green school for as an example. It's like the world. Green school represents a new model, right? It's an incubation. It's an incubator. It's an incubator for a way of thinking, but it's also an incubator for a way of living. Is it perfect? Far from it. Is it a test trial with good intentions? That's probably the best description. It's for the future. It's for the next eon. It's for the next epoch. The ones our kids left, that's the old model. We knew it wasn't working. The brick and mortar, the tight rigidity, the test taking and the filling in the dots, dumping medicines in our kids' brains. We left them. What's happening here is an educational movement. Okay, and Buddhism is best described that way also. It's an educational movement. It's about people getting together, learning, just like our kids are learning, behaving trying on new behaviors, just like our kids are trying on new behaviors as they put their hands in the mud, and relating to each other in a different way. So that's what Buddhism, that's when I teach courses, that's what we're trying to do. I mean, I've taught a 4-year course, for example. It was supposed to be a replication of a college education for people interested in contemplative methods in Buddhism. Because it takes that long. It takes that long. Like, your kids are growing up at green school. What if you were enrolled in a course where in 4 years when your kids graduated, you were also on a journey? That's what the bridge is for, right? You guys set up the bridge so that adults could learn in parallel with their kids here. And mostly, thank God, what you guys are teaching are around the topics of sustainability. This could be another alternative. It's like the inner contemplative tradition of learning how to soul sculpt your life. It has a multi-dimensional, trajectory. It has multi-dimensional assets: education, livelihood, meditation, engagement, social service. All kinds of things are packed into that, and then give it some runway. That's my short answer.
Any other questions from anybody? We're good. It's just quickly that you mentioned this integration thing. I went on this little pilgrimage personal development program in the States, completed it. It's quite a famous one. I was so happy. I was like grounded. I'm like connected, had my little spirit guy going on. I come back to Bali. I'm like thinking like, I got it figured out. And then I come home and I'm doing my best. And then like 2 weeks in, my 15-year-old son at the time says, "Hey Dad, that program you did," he goes, "I don't think it's worth it." I'm like, oh man. So anyways, I'm gonna have them watch the recording here about integration. So anyways, but thank you so much for everything today. And I mean, boy, I think
Let me just add on that.
okay, please. Yeah, go ahead. Are you gonna help me or are you gonna send me down a dark hole?
It resonate with you because we're probably built in a similar way to be type A, right? If we have the right ingredients, we should bake a cake perfectly. If I go on the trip and I learn the method and I'm disciplined, then I should get the result. Here's what Jung talked about, is that sometimes life gives us what we're not looking for in order to develop another side of our being. And what I mean by that is the mandala represents wholeness. It has even sometimes contradictory elements in union. So Jung said that, your incorporation of your ability to navigate the shadow is just as important as your competency to rebuild the planet. In other words, we're very good at creating opportunities for ourselves, but we don't have a lot of tolerance for ambiguity. We don't have a lot of tolerance for when we fail. We don't have a lot of tolerance for when we don't know. We don't know how to survive days and days on end of being in the desert with doubt. How do we ever get that competency so that no matter what life throws at us, we can ride it, if not by going through it without trying to find the escape hatch? So it's like you built companies, you're an executor. You know that game. That's well oiled for you. How many of us get an opportunity to learn about ourselves when we're not in a position of power, authority, competency? And don't we need that skill? Don't we need that to be part of the mandal? Yeah, so that's, like, I just had a client the other day. He's super good at creating opportunities for himself, but now he injured himself and he can't walk and he can't work. And he's doing everything he can to get back to where he was. But now I told him, this is your opportunity. Your shadow, your unconscious is providing you an opportunity to become more whole with parts of yourself you're not comfortable with. And that's a hard pill to swallow. He didn't like that very much. Let's see if he calls back.
All right, well, that is great. Well, let's give Miles here a really nice thank you. And thank you to everybody online and for participating. And everybody have a nice day and be kind, right? That's what we can do. So thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody.